Welcome to the Hindu Daily. We've got quite a range of sources in front of us today. We're touching on everything from geopolitics and India's role in the Middle East to public health issues right in our own kitchens.
And then there's the climate resilience of our cities, the huge energy footprint of AI, even legal rights in the digital age.
Exactly. Plus some really profound human stories. So let's dive straight in. We'll start with the editorial section, looking at India's stance on the Palestine conflict. The context here is the recent recognition of Palestinian statehood by countries like France, UK, Canada.
Portugal, too, yeah.
And now over 150 UN members recognize Palestine. But the key point from the source is that India was actually way ahead of the curve on this.
Decades ahead. India formally recognized Palestinian statehood back in November 1988. There was long-standing support for the PLO even before that.
And this fits into a broader historical picture, doesn't it? The source talks about India's legacy as a sort of moral voice.
It does. It reminds us of India standing against apartheid South Africa, backing Algeria's independence, even taking a stand in conflicts like Bangladesh and Vietnam. It wasn't just talk. It was action based on principles.
Principles embedded in the Constitution, actually. The directive principle about promoting international peace and security.
Exactly. And for years, India maintained this, let's say, principled commitment, supporting a two-state solution, backing UN resolutions against the occupation.
While also having full diplomatic ties with Israel. It was a balancing act.
A carefully managed one, plus providing humanitarian aid to Palestine, things like scholarships, healthcare support.
Okay, so that's the history. But the source we're looking at today offers a sharp critique of India's recent position, particularly since October 2023.
It does. Very sharp. Following the Hamas attacks and then the Israeli response, the source describes India's reaction as a profound silence, a conspicuously muted voice.
And it uses incredibly strong language to describe the situation in Gaza, calling the Israeli actions nothing less than genocidal. That's a direct quote from the source, of course.
Yes, and it cites the figures over 55,000 Palestinian civilians killed, infrastructure destroyed, conditions of forced starvation due to aid restrictions. The source sees India's silence in this context as an abdication of both humanity and morality.
That's a heavy charge.
Yeah.
What does the source suggest is driving this shift away from India's traditional stance?
Well, the source argues it's less about strategic interests or constitutional values and more about personal friendship between leaders. It suggests this kind of personalized diplomacy isn't really sustainable or appropriate for major foreign policy issues.
So the argument is that personal ties are overriding principled foreign policy.
That's the claim. And the source points to things like the recent signing of a bilateral investment agreement with Israel or hosting its controversial far-right finance minister as moves that seem to contradict India's long-held positions and potentially isolate it within the global south.
Where India has historically sought a leadership role based on, well, those anti-colonial principles we mentioned.
Precisely. The critique essentially frames this as a risk to India's strategic positioning and its moral standing.
So the conclusion is quite pointed.
Very. It suggests India needs to see this not just geopolitically, but as a test of India's ethical and civilizational heritage. It talks about historical empathy owed to Palestine, given India's own colonial past.
So the call isn't necessarily to pick sides aggressively, but to return to a kind of principled leadership.
That seems to be the core message, a call for consistency with India's founding values rather than what the source sees as a drift towards partisanship driven by factors other than principle. It's a strong piece.
Okay, let's shift focus now, moving from global ethics to a pressing issue closer to home, public health. Specifically, salt consumption. We hear a lot about sugar and fats, but this source argues salt is just as big a concern, especially with the rise of non-communicable diseases, NCDs, in India.
And the numbers are, frankly, startling. Indian adults are consuming somewhere between 8 and 11 grams of salt per day.
Which is almost double the WHO recommendation, right? That's 5 to 6 grams.
Exactly. Double. And here's the part that really jumps out from the source.
Yeah.
Nearly 3/4 of this excess salt isn't coming from the usual suspects, like packaged chips or snacks.
Really? So where is it coming from?
Mostly from homemade food. Things like pickles, papad, chutneys, even just the amount added during cooking.
Wow. So while we might be checking labels on bread or ketchup, and there is hidden salt there too, in cookies, cakes.
There absolutely is. But the biggest driver, according to this analysis, is what's happening in our own kitchens.
That changes the game, doesn't it? Because the health impact is serious. Hypertension rates are high in India?
Very high. affecting about 28.1% of adults. And high salt intake is a major factor driving that, increasing the risk of heart attacks, strokes.
So what's the solution? If it's homemade food, it's harder to regulate.
It requires a different approach, but the economic case for acting is huge. The WHO actually calls salt reduction a Best Buy intervention.
A Best Buy. What does that mean in practice?
It means it's incredibly cost-effective. They estimate something like a $12 return in saved healthcare costs, increased productivity for every single dollar invested in salt reduction programs.
That's a massive return. But what about those popular beliefs, like using rock salt or pink salt is healthier?
Yeah, the source tackles that directly. It clarifies that these fancy salts, rock salt, black salt, Himalayan pink salt, they're not significantly lower in sodium. Sodium is sodium, and too much raises blood pressure, period.
And they might lack something important, too.
Correct. They're often not iodized, unlike regular table salt. So relying on them could actually lead to iodine deficiency, which is another serious public health issue.
Okay, so if home cooking is key and fancy salts aren't the answer, what is the strategy? The source mentions broadening our focus.
Yes. Instead of having separate sugar boards or oil boards, the idea is to create comprehensive HFSS boards, high fat, salt, sugar, tackle them together.
That makes sense. And what about government's role? Public meals.
That's another huge leverage point. Regulating salt content in meals provided in schools, Anganwadi centers, hospitals. If you reform the public food procurement norms to set salt limits, you reach millions, especially vulnerable groups.
Beyond that, what else can be done? We see examples from other countries.
Definitely. Mandatory front-of-pack warning labels, like Chile has implemented very successfully. That forces manufacturers to be transparent.
And public awareness.
Crucial. Behavior change campaigns are needed. Teaching people to gradually reduce salt, use herbs and spices for flavor instead. Even simple community measures, like restaurants only putting salt shakers on the table if you asked for them.
Small changes that add up.
And starting early is key. The source stresses no added salt for babies up to 1 year old. Taste for salt is acquired, you know. We can teach healthier preferences from the start.
From the kitchen to the city streets now. Let's talk about the monsoon challenge facing urban India. It feels like an annual ritual of frustration, doesn't it?
It really does. Cities prepare, funds are allocated, but inevitably parts of urban India get inundated. And the source puts it bluntly. Our cities are designed for a climate that no longer exists.
We see it every year. Heavy flooding in Punjab, Delhi, Kolkata recently. The damages run into thousands of crores.
And the critical point isn't just the total amount of rain over the season, it's the intensity and the timing.
Right. You get these incredibly heavy downpours happening outside the traditional monsoon months or concentrated in very short periods.
Exactly. Like heavy rains hitting northern states in September or unexpected May floods in Mumbai or Delhi. The data is stark. 64% of Indian tehsils have seen an increase in heavy rainfall days.
So the pattern is changing. The source mentions a technical concept here, IDF curves, intensity, duration, frequency.
Yes, IDF curves. They basically map out how intense rainfall is expected to be over a certain duration and how often that kind of event is likely to occur in a specific place.
And these are telling a news story.
A worrying one. The example given is Thane City. Their analysis now shows that getting 50 millimeters of rain in just 1 hour is something expected roughly once every 2 years.
50 millimeters in an hour.
Yeah. The core issue is this compression of rainfall. What might have fallen over a whole day in the past is now coming down in maybe just 60 minutes. Our old drainage systems just weren't built for that kind of sudden, intense deluge.
So our infrastructure is literally outdated for today's weather.
Yeah.
What needs to change? The source proposes 3 main actions.
3 interconnected things. First, sub-daily analysis. Planners have to look at these short-duration, high-intensity patterns, not just long-term averages. Mumbai's BMC, for instance, is trying to widen drains to handle much higher hourly rates, like 120 millimeters per hour.
Okay, designing for the short bursts. What's second?
Coordination. This sounds simple, but it's vital. Cleaning stormwater drains needs to be perfectly timed with municipal solid waste collection. Why? Because unmanaged garbage is a primary cause of drain clogging during heavy rains.
Makes sense. If the drains are clear but garbage washes into them.
Exactly. The source mentions Vijayawada using joint monsoon response teams as a good model for coordinating these efforts effectively.
And the third action.
Updating the data. Cities absolutely must update their IDF curves regularly, say every 5 to 10 years. You can't build new infrastructure based on rainfall patterns from 20 years ago. It just won't work.
And the design itself needs rethinking.
Yes. Drainage needs to consider the local ground, the microcatchment topography, and critically, it needs to be separate from the sewage system. Otherwise, heavy rain just overwhelms everything. We have to accept the climate isn't what it used to be.
Okay, now for a topic that feels very current. AI, data centers, and the energy grid. There's this sort of paradox, isn't there? Is AI helping us save energy, or is it becoming a massive energy burden?
It's definitely both, which creates a real dilemma. The International Energy Agency, the IEA, has some projections that are quite sobering.
What are they forecasting?
They expect global data center energy demand to more than double by 2030. And the main driver behind that surge, AI demand specifically for AI-optimized centers, could quadruple.
Quadruple. And what does that mean for India?
It's a huge challenge. India's data center demand is projected to jump from about 1.2 gigawatts now to 4.5 gigawatts by 2030. That's a massive increase,
4.5 gigawatts.
driven largely by AI adoption. And this will put enormous pressure on our grid, needing an extra 40 to 50 terawatt hours of electricity each year. Remember, India is already the world's third largest energy consumer.
Right. How does that 1–2% global data center consumption compare to other industries, just for perspective?
Well, it's expected to rise to 3–4% globally by 2030, which is significant and growing fast. But it's still less than heavy industries like steel, which is around 7%.
Okay. But there's another resource pressure point too, isn't there? It's not just electricity.
No, it's water. These massive data centers need huge amounts of fresh water for cooling servers. And in a country like India, with significant water stress in many regions, that's a major secondary impact we need to factor in.
Energy and water. Okay, but let's look at the other side of the coin. How is AI helping with energy management?
It definitely has a positive role to play. AI is transforming how energy is delivered, used, and governed. It can significantly improve efficiency.
In what ways?
It can help develop new energy transition technologies, for instance, or find new materials to reduce reliance on imported critical minerals needed for batteries and renewables. AI can also speed up project development, including the rollout of clean energy.
Are we seeing this happen in India already, in specific examples?
Yes, absolutely. The real estate sector is a good example. They're using AI for things like predictive heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, HVAC systems, smart lighting, reporting energy savings of up to 25%.
And things like green building certifications are pushing this.
They are. Certifications like GIA and LAID increasingly encourage AI-based monitoring and optimization. We also see specific companies investing heavily.
Like who?
Nextra, which is part of Airtel, uses AI-powered cooling. Bright Night has an AI platform called Power Alpha to optimize hybrid solar-wind battery plants, aiming for reliable round-the-clock renewable power.
Utility companies, too.
Yes, major players like Tata Power and Beascom are using AI for real-time load forecasting, predicting and detecting faults faster, and even enabling grid sections to heal themselves to reduce outages.
So AI is making things more efficient, which is great. But you mentioned the overall demand is still soaring. Are these efficiency gains enough to offset the massive growth?
That's the crux of the issue. No, they're not. Despite these gains, overall energy consumption and therefore carbon emissions from the sector are projected to increase significantly.
Because meeting all that new demand purely with renewables just isn't feasible right now.
Practically speaking, no, not at the scale and speed required. The grid can't handle it yet, and building out renewables takes time. So the source argues we need a fundamental transition of the energy grid itself.
Which might require more government intervention.
Quite possibly. The source talks about needing some nudging by governments. This could mean pushing for the development of more sustainable AI systems designed from the ground up for energy efficiency, maybe mandating the use of recycled or gray water for cooling, things like that.
A complex balancing act.
Okay.
Let's shift gears again, moving into the legal sphere and the digital age. We're looking at personality rights, especially for celebrities. There's been quite a bit of court activity recently.
Yes, particularly the Delhi High Court. They've issued a series of orders protecting Bollywood figures Amitabh Bachchan, Karan Johar, even involving Aishwarya Rai and Abhishek Bachchan's daughter from unauthorized use of their image, voice, likeness, especially concerning deepfakes and AI-generated content.
So what exactly are personality rights? How are they defined legally in India?
Broadly, they safeguard an individual's identity, their name, image, voice, signature, distinguishing features from being commercially exploited by others without permission.
And the legal basis. It's not one single law, is it?
No, it's a mix. It's grounded in common law principles like the right to privacy and the right to publicity, but it's also supported by specific intellectual property laws. The Copyright Act offers protection for performers' rights, and the Trademark Act allows individuals to register distinctive traits, like Shah Rukh Khan registering his name as trademarks.
And there's a constitutional link here too, right? Back to Article 21.
Absolutely fundamental. These rights are deeply connected to the right to autonomy and privacy under Article 21. When someone's image or voice is used without consent, especially through things like AI deepfakes or unauthorized merchandise, it violates their agency, their control over their own identity.
The courts seem to be building this protection case by case. What are some landmark judgments the source highlights?
Well, it goes back quite a way. The R. Rajagopal case in 1994 was key in recognizing the right to control one's identity based on privacy. More recently, a Madras High Court case involving Regina Kanth established an important principle:
Which was?
that infringement can happen simply if the celebrity is easily identifiable. You don't necessarily need to prove that the public was actually deceived into thinking the celebrity endorsed the product. Just using the likeness without permission can be enough.
And the courts are adapting to new tech, like AI.
They are having to. The Anil Kapoor judgment from 2023 granted quite broad protection. It made a clear distinction. Free speech allows for genuine criticism, satire, parody, but not for commercial exploitation or actions that tarnish the person's image, like using morphed photos.
And specific cases on voice cloning.
Yes. The Arijit Singh case this year tackled that head-on. It explicitly noted how vulnerable singers and other performers are to generative AI voice cloning, highlighting the urgency of the threat.
But what about the free speech argument? Article 19.1 guarantees freedom of expression. How do courts balance that against personality rights?
They try to strike a balance. The source mentions the Dowler-Mendy case from 2010, where the court actually cautioned against overemphasizing publicity rights. It warned that no juror could chill free speech and take away the public's right to things like satire, lampooning, and parody, which are legitimate forms of expression.
So parody is generally okay, but commercial exploitation that misleads or harms reputation is not.
That seems to be the line the courts are drawing. If it crosses into misleading commercial use or defamation, it's generally not protected by free speech.
The source concludes with a significant worry, though.
It does. The main problem highlighted is the lack of a single, comprehensive law covering personality rights. Enforcement currently relies on these piecemeal judicial precedents, which can be inconsistent and slow.
And this isn't just about celebrities, is it?
Absolutely not. That's a critical point. While celebrities have the resources to fight these battles, these rights need to protect ordinary citizens, too. Think about women targeted by deepfakes or revenge pornography. The harm is immense, and they often lack the means to pursue legal action effectively.
Tracking down every infringing use online must be incredibly difficult.
It's described as a Herculean task. Courts can order specific URLs blocked, but without a stronger, unified legal framework, protecting everyone adequately in the face of rapidly evolving tech remains a huge challenge. It's a gap that needs filling.
Finally, let's turn to our last source, a deeply human story about organ donation. It starts with Professor Vaini Kirpal's experience.
Yes, she received a heart transplant at 69, which is quite remarkable. Her book, New Life, New Beginnings, shares her story and those of 26 others. The aim is really to break the silence around transplantation and challenge the myth that recipients are always living fragile, diseased lives.
It's about showing the transformative power of donation. But the need is enormous, isn't it?
It's staggering. India did see a jump to nearly 18,900 transplants last year, which is progress. But compare that to the waiting list.
What are those numbers?
Around 63,000 people waiting for kidneys, 50,000 waiting for hearts, 22,000 for livers. The gap is vast. India's organ donation rate remains critically low, unfortunately below 1%.
50,000 people waiting for a heart. That's hard to comprehend. Are efforts being made to increase donation rates?
There are positive steps. The National Organ and Tissue Transplant Organization, NATO, launched a website in 2023 for online pledges, and apparently 3.30 lakh citizens have registered since then.
That's encouraging.
It is. But the source emphasizes that lack of awareness and deep-seated myths, often tied to cultural or religious beliefs, are still major barriers. The gap between demand and supply continues to widen each year. Many people die waiting.
The source also mentions other books that frame donation in a powerful way, calling it an exchange driven by compassion.
Yes, like Rachel Clark's Story of a Heart. It intertwines the story of the recipient, Max, with the donor, a young girl named Kira. It really lays bare the brutal arithmetic, as the source puts it, but also the incredible humanity involved. Apparently, this story even influenced organ donation law in the UK.
Showing the personal impact can be incredibly moving.
Absolutely. And there's Red Green's book, The Gift That Heals. He wrote it after his young son tragically died while on holiday in Italy, and his organs went on to save 7 Italians. It highlights that radical kindness in one person's generosity in death.
That's an extraordinary act.
It truly is. And the source concludes by reflecting on the unique symbolism of the heart, not just as an organ, but as this powerful metaphor for hope, for continued life. As long as that donated heart keeps beating, life and hope persist. It's a message that needs much wider circulation.
So, quite a journey today. From the ethics of foreign policy and the need for empathy, through the very real climate threats to our cities, to the double-edged sword of AI's energy use.
And we landed on the fact that just relying on efficiency gains probably won't be enough to handle AI's massive power demands sustainably. Policy shifts seem inevitable.
That leads to a really interesting thought to leave our listeners with.
Right. Thinking about that nudging by governments, the source mentioned, for sustainable AI. As AI's appetite for energy and water keeps growing, you have to wonder, will future policy interventions move beyond just promoting efficient cooling towards perhaps regulating how resource-intensive AI models are trained? Or even making tougher choices about prioritizing energy for essential services versus, say, highly consumptive AI applications that might be seen as less critical. It forces a conversation about resource allocation on a finite planet.
A provocative question indeed. Where will those lines be drawn? Thank you for listening. If you want to provide suggestions, please contact on the Twitter handle given in the episode description. As always, we are eager to hear what our listeners want to be informed about. We wish you a great day.